तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Welcome back to the study of the Bhagavad Gita. So last time we had stopped at the famous verse Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phala heturbhurma te sangost karmani. We were revising the verses of the second chapter. So here, this is a very important verse which talks about the fact that we can only control our actions and we cannot control the various outcomes. So, therefore, the outcome should not motivate the action, or rather, the outcome alone should not motivate the action. And at the same time, one should not be lazy, one should not be laid back just because we don't have complete control over the outcome. So, for example, in a game of cricket, you the batsman cannot say, "I will only come to bat if I'm going to score a sixer," or a bowler cannot say, "I will only bowl if I get wickets. Otherwise, I won't bowl. Every ball I bowl should get a wicket." No, we can't predict. So even if he is a fantastic bowler, if the fielder drops a catch, then he cannot do anything. So it's not completely under his control. So, similarly, in our day to day life, we cannot expect that whatever we take up will work exactly the way we want. But still, we have to do the work and we have to be focused and take up activities that are aligned to our nature. So, this is basically the uh, the main idea what Krishna puts forth in these verses. So when we look at some of these verses, like the 47th, these are observations of the world around us. So some of these, like later we will look at this in the 18th chapter, the different factors that determine the outcome of an action. Again, these are all things which anybody can verify in our experience. It is not something mystical. It is not related to belief. It is something which can be immediately verified by our own experience. So Bhagavad Gita especially has a lot of such verses where we can immediately experiment in our life and know the reality of these or the import and the importance of these verses. So there is a lot of stress in the Gita, and especially in the second chapter, for working with a balanced mind, not worrying about the different kind of results, not focusing only on result, but focusing on the work at hand. Now we take up a certain activity driven by a basic desire to accomplish something. This cannot be avoided unless you're going beyond this basic cause and effect of there is karma and artha, right? We are trying to fulfill our desires within the framework of dharma. Like I told you, this is how the three purusharthas out of the four are connected. And when these three purusharthas are, pursued in a framework like this, inside the framework of dharma, we are using artha to fulfill our kama and enjoy. Then slowly there is a tendency towards moksha, which is to be always in a state of ananda, right? In I think the beginning of the second chapter, we discuss some of these things. So if we are able to work without uh, bothering too much about the results, if we are motivated to work because the work itself is exciting, then the chances of we getting disappointed, the chances of getting frustrated are much lower. So therefore, the whole idea of karma yoga, what is also called a nirlepa karma or nishkama karma, that is work without desire, work where we are not very much attached to the outcomes of the actions. So, like I said, when you're watching a cricket match or any sport where you are not particularly bothered about either of the teams playing, then you can watch it in a dispassionate way. Whereas if you are deeply supporting one side, then you have a lot at stake. So you feel bad now if you're watching a tennis match between, say, Federer and Nadal, and you don't have any favorite. You just watch. You like to watch tennis. Then you can enjoy everybody, both of them playing a good backhand or scoring a point, you can enjoy it. Whereas if you're a die-hard Federer fan or die-hard Nadal fan, then every time the other player scores a point, you are disappointed. So therefore, when we are able to look at it, in a dispassionate way, enjoying the game itself, naturally we feel more relaxed and our nerves are more balanced. So, having discussed some of the traits of karma yoga and um, the smart approach to work, as he calls it, till the 53rd shloka, then in shloka number 54, now Arjuna seems to get interested in this whole explanation. And he asks Krishna, okay, this is very exciting. Sthita Prajna, a person who is of a balanced intellect, a person who is completely in control of himself. So, what is the manner in which he leads his life? How does he speak? How does he sit? How does he go about leading his life? And then, starting from shloka number 55 till the end of the chapter, there's a detailed discussion by Krishna on this prajna lakshana. What are the characteristic traits of somebody who has got a stable intellect, who is a realized person? He starts off by saying, when a person abandons all selfish desires and is established within the self, Atmanyevatmana tushta sthita prajnastat uchyate. Such a person is said to be of steady intellect. His mind is not agitated during times of adversity. And when things are all going well, he is not fooled into believing that this is going to be there forever. He's not craving for pleasures. Whether it's pleasure or pain, he treats it the same way. He knows that this is all temporary, it will come and go. He's not affected by either passion or fear or anger. This person is a man or woman of steady intellect. Then he is detached in all matters. When we say detached, one should not think that such a person is not bothered about anything. There is a difference between being detached and being heedless. A careless person is not a vairagya, does not display vairagya. Vairagya is displayed by a person who sincerely participates in action but is not too much worried about the outcomes. That is what a real vairagya means. Detachment is not detachment from action, or just being lazy is not being detached, but in engaging wholeheartedly in something, but not affected by either the action or the outcome. So this is very important to know that carelessness is not vairagya. So he is detached in all matters. He neither rejoices the pleasant nor hates the unpleasant. This is also important. And his intellect stands firm. And just like a tortoise withdraws its limbs into its shell when faced with any danger, the wise person withdraws all the indriyas away from the um, Vishaya. So the senses he draws within himself away from the sensates. So there is no possibility of sensations, and his intellect stands firm. And even though he abstains feeding the senses with sensates and avoiding sensations, always there will be some cravings for sensations will remain. Little bit will remain, even though he's trying very hard. And those cravings will finally go away when he attains the highest level, when he is in a state of complete bliss. This all his cravings will go away. So the sense organs are so powerful that at any point of time, if you are a little bit careless, immediately they go jumping after the sensates. So unless we are established in oneself and we are focused, we will lose the concentration, we will lose that detachment. And there is always a very, very strong force of the indriyas, the turbulent sense organs, always try to agitate the mind of a person, even when he or she is trying very hard to control oneself away from the sense objects or the sensates like smell and sight and sound and taste and texture. These things are always there, and the sense organs are violently trying to reach out to these sensates. So it is very important that this person draws back into himself or herself and realizes that these sense organs are very powerful and I must not lose my concentration. And then in the 62nd and 63rd verse is a beautiful set of two verses where he talks about when we feed the senses with sensates and we are preoccupied with sensations, we easily get attached to these sensations. Once you get attached to the sensations, there is a desire to have more and more of the sensation. We desire to attain it, we desire to always be attached to the sensation. So if there's a beautiful food item, we like the taste, again and again we want to keep eating that. Or if there is a beautiful sound, again and again we want to keep listening to that. So there is an attachment to uh, uh, sensation and a desire to obtain them. Now, like I mentioned, desires can never be 100% fulfilled. There will always be something remaining. So, when the desires are unfulfilled, this unfulfilled desire or a forcible, trying to keep away from desire without understanding, any of these things ultimately lead to anger and frustration. And frustration, when somebody is really frustrated, really angry, the natural result is confusion. So, frustration and anger lead to confusion, and confusion impairs the viveka. Viveka is the wisdom to discern between right and wrong, the wisdom to discern between real and unreal. So this viveka or wisdom, it get disrupted. And when there is the lack of reasoning, when there is no viveka, then the buddhi is destroyed. There is the power of reasoning is destroyed, and when the power of reasoning is destroyed, the individual is doomed. So here we see a clear connection between which starts with the craving for sensates and preoccupation with the sensations leading to destruction. But a self disciplined person who realizes the nature of the indriyas and how it works, such a person subdues his senses and he's not either attracted or averse. He remains neutral, he remains calm, and even as he encounters all these sensates, he remains very peaceful. And once he attains that peace, then all his pains and troubles and dukkha is destroyed, and this intellect of this person becomes firmly established in the true self. And once there is a discipline, then naturally that will lead to focus and wisdom. But if there is no discipline, there is no chance of being focused or chance of getting wisdom. And without focus, without single pointed focus, one cannot get peace. And without peace, one cannot be happy. And finally, he gives a few examples like for how the wind forcibly draws a ship away from its chartered course. The sense organs of a person who is not focused, who is not disciplined, it drags the mind away from the chartered course, whatever we are trying to accomplish. The wandering senses will drag it away. Finally, once a person lives overcomes all the desires and lives without any cravings for sensations and lives without a sense of ownership or ego, then that is a person who has attained peace, and it's known as the brahmi sthiti or the state of brahman. Once a person reaches this state of brahman, he is never deluded, and it is a permanent stay in that place. He never comes back. And even at the hour of death, even a moment before one dies, if they attain the state, then once you enter a timeless state, it doesn't matter when you have gone inside, it is a timeless. It does not have a beginning and an end. It is a realization of the absolute principle. So, with this, we come to the end of the second chapter. We've seen this very, very interesting chapter, which has got multiple dimensions to it. There are some parts of it which are very practical, which deal with the importance of Arjuna fighting the war, and what happens if he doesn't fight, and the practical implications of it. There's also a discussion on the highest truth, which is the Atma. Then there are this very, very practical, guides, practical instructions for people to push their standards, push themselves up in the concept of karma yoga in one section, and following that we have the characteristics of this, um, sthita prajna, who is a steady intellect, a person who is realized, a wise person. What are the traits of a wise person? So when we look at the Bhagavad Gita as a whole, D.V. Gundappa in his work, he says, what are the topics primarily discussed between Krishna and Arjuna? One is the jiva, which is the individual. So all the nature of the individuals, the troubles, the shortcomings, the triumphs of individual. Then he discusses about Atma, which is the higher self or the spirit or the soul. He discusses about the Jagat. Jagat is the universe, is the world around, the material world around us is Jagat. And there is an interaction between Jiva and Jagat. So these things are discussed. Then he discusses about Ishvara, which is kind of the supreme ruler or the supreme being, the kind of God aspect. So we have Brahman, which is a all-pervading spirit, the supreme being. In the world, the Brahman becomes Ishvara, which is kind of the ruler of the world, or what loosely the conception of God in the Western sense, but basically it's a supreme controller. Then he discusses about dharma and adharma. Dharma is what is sustainable, adharma is what is not sustainable, what is going to lead to a breakdown of the framework, that is adharma. What is going to sustain and nourish and protect is dharma. So dharma and adharma. He discusses also a little bit about swarga and naraka. So swarga is loosely heaven. One should not think of it, because every religion has a different conception of heaven. So Swarga is heaven, and it is a place where people are rewarded for the good actions that they have committed while they are alive. And Naraka is the opposite. It's loosely can be called hell, but it is a place which is where people are punished for all the activities, bad things that they have done here. Then there is also the Janmantarya, or the various births that people take. So the belief is that we don't have only one birth. We are born, and then we die, and then we are born again. Then there's a cycle of birth and death, and only a person who is able to attain mukti goes out of this cycle. Otherwise, after death, one goes to Swarga or Naraka, finishes the quota of the stay there, and they are reborn again, and again they lead this life. So this is the belief. The Finally, he discusses about moksha, which is the ultimate liberation, a state of bliss, going out of this. And the most important thing one has to understand in the philosophical sense is the idea of Brahman, which is all encompassing, supreme being, all pervading being. And with that understanding, one can relate to each one of these things, Jiva and Atma, Jagat, and so on. So Brahman is the ultimate tattva, ultimate reality that he is trying to discuss in the Bhagavad Gita, and also in any text of Indian philosophy. The idea of Brahman and moksha and all these things are very, very strong. So with this, I think we have come to a overview of the second chapter. Let us move to the third chapter. If you have any questions specifically with regard to the second chapter, please send it to me at the end of the class by an email. I will take it up in the start of the next session. Um, Okay, now let me share my screen. There is one verse. See, this is a danger of your mother attending your session. So my mom, after yesterday's class, she's like, "Hey, you made a mistake." So you see, our mothers are they specialize in finding out the mistakes of their kids. So anyway, I'm thankful to my mother for pointing out. So there's one verse where I had made some mistake in pronunciation, and I was immediately caught. So can you see my screen? Okay. So here, um, Ya Nisha Sarva Bhutanam. Yeah. So here, there are small variation in the second and third line of the words. So it should be Ya Nisha Sarva Bhutanam Tasyam Jagarti Sanyami. Then the next line has Yasyam Jagrati Bhutani Sa Nisha Pashyato Munehe. So one has Jagarti and other one has Jagrati. So just to put it on record, I mentioned it. Okay, so let us go to the third chapter. Okay, fantastic. Arjuna Uvacha, Jayasi chet karmanaste mata buddhir janardana tat kim karmani ghore mam niyojayasi keshava. Very, very pertinent point he brings up. Arjuna says, you consider knowledge to be superior to action, right? You consider jnana to be superior to karma. Then why do you urge me to commit this terrible deed? He says, Arjuna Uvacha, Janardana, Buddhihi karmana jayasi te mata chet. Buddhihi, knowledge, intellect, karmanaha, than action, than karma, jayasi is superior. Te mata, your opinion, chet. If you consider you deem knowledge and intellect to be greater than action, Keshava, tat ghore karmani mam kim niyojasi, niyojayasi. So why do you urge me, niyojayasi? Why do you urge me? Ghore karmani. Ghora is terrible, ghastly. So why do you urge me to commit this terrible deed? So although now there he has um, been instructed in the second chapter with some of the important ideas of why he should fight the war, he is still not completely convinced. He says, now you are talking so much about jnana yoga and balancing and between the good and bad outcomes and focusing on knowledge. When if knowledge is more important, then why are you urging me to commit this terrible action? Let me focus on jnana yoga. I'll go away and do meditation and be away from all this madness. So we'll just recite this once. Arjuna Uvacha.
अर्जुन उवाच
Jayasi chet karmanaste
जायसी चेत् कर्मणस्ते
mata buddhir janardana
मता बुद्धिर्जनार्दन
tat kim karmani ghore mam
तत् किं कर्मणि घोरे मां
niyojayasi keshava.
नियोजयसि केशव.
Then he further goes on to say, Vyamishrenaiva vakyena buddhim mohayasiva me tad ekam vada nishchitya yena shreyoham apnuyam. Many times we say this kind of thing. You confuse me with this conflicting message. Tell me for certain just one thing that will lead me to the greatest good. Sometimes we are getting so many instructions from our parents or gurus or our friends or something, and in the middle of all that is it, just tell me one thing, one one what is the surest thing? Now I want to reach a certain place. Nowadays it's very easy. You have a GPS and all sorts of technology. But in the old days, you'll have to ask somebody, your friend or your uncle or aunt or somebody to tell you how to get to a certain place. And many times you have multiple paths to reach the same destination. And if somebody who's a very frequent traveler will tell you, you can take this particular route up the Richmond town, and then you take a left here, and then you can go down that road, or you can go via some Tom's Bakery, or you can go via Malaysian. So he will give you some six options. You can do this, there is a shortcut here, or you can go in under that flyover, you can take this. Then what you say, just tell me one route, which is the best route at this hour. You take all these decisions yourself. Just tell me one quick, what is the thing I should do. Don't tell me that this is one path, that is one path. I don't want all this thing. Just give me fastest way now. So like what we asked the GPS, right? So like that, Arjuna is asking Krishna, you're confusing me. I don't know whether the karma is right, bhakti, what is happening. For sure, tell me what will lead me to the greatest good. Vyamishrena iva. Almost like it is confusing, it is mixed up, all, entangled. Vyamishrena iva vakyena, by your words, which are almost like conflicting or confusing me with so much of mix up. Vyamishrena iva vakyena, by that, me buddhim mohayasi iva. It's almost like you are confusing me, it's almost like I'm having a illusion. I'm being deluded by these conflicting messages. Tat yena aham shreyaha. Therefore, what is that going to be good for me? Aham shreya. What is the best thing for me? Apnuyam tadrisham ekam nischitya vada. Shreyaha apnuyam. By what will I obtain the greatest good? Something of which will lead me to the greatest good. Ekam nischitya vada. One thing for sure, clearly in a determined way, you tell me. One path, one instruction. Don't confuse me with this message. Vyamishrenaiva vakyena.
व्यामिश्रेणेव वाक्येन
So vyamishrena iva vakyena. So that becomes vyamishrenaiva vakyena.
व्यामिश्रेणैव वाक्येन
Buddhim mohayasiva me
बुद्धिं मोहयसीव मे
tadekam vada nischitya
तदेकं वद निश्चित्य
yena shreyoham apnuyam.
येन श्रेयोऽहम् आप्नुयाम्.
Then Krishna says, Lokesmin dvividha nishtha pura prokta mayanagha jnana yogena sankhyanam karma yogena yoginam. So, Anagha, O blameless one, I have proclaimed in the past there are two ways of leading a fulfilling life: the path of knowledge for the adherents of reasoning, and the path of selfless action for yogis. So, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, Anagha, blameless one, sinless one, Asmin Loke, in this world, Pura, long back, Maya, by me, Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam. So, for the people who are adherents of reasoning, I have given the path of Jnana Yoga. And Karma Yogena Yoginam. So, for yogis, there is a path of Karma Yoga, the path of selfless action. Iti Dvividha Nishtha Prokta. So, I have proclaimed two types, Dvividha, two varieties, Nishtha, which are the two varieties of the established uh, or honest way of, or a fulfilling way of leading the life. Prokta, I have told. So there are two paths. One is the path of reasoning, and the other is the path of action. Then later we also see this path of devotion and bhakti. So primarily there are these three paths. Now, of course, we can always find a path where you draw a little bit from here, a little bit from there. All these possibilities are there. But broadly speaking, when we do something with absolute focus, and not worrying about the consequences, not worrying about too many things. There is a path of selfless action, is an action-oriented way, which is the for yogis. Whereas the path of knowledge is where there's a lot of mental weightlifting that happens, a lot of thinking that goes on, and for people who can um, do that kind of weightlifting, people who have that intellectual ability and the temperament for that. Now, some people may be very intelligent, but they may not be interested to spend so much of their mental energy in analysis and deep study of things. They would rather do things, they would rather work, and their tendency is more to accomplish things by action. So, like this, there are two broad divisions that he says. So, based on the nature of the individual, one has to choose the path. Right, same thing, going back to the example of this traveling to a certain destination. Even in the GPS, you have the thing when you're, if you're driving a two-wheeler, you have a certain path. If you're driving a car, then a certain path may not work for you. If you're a person who is impatient, you don't like traffic, then you can go in a slightly longer route which has got less traffic, which may take a little more time, but the driving experience itself is very, very relaxed. Some people have to reach very quickly. It doesn't matter what the path is, but they have to, so it has to be the shortest and the least congested. And, like this, based on the time of the day, based on the vehicle you have, based on your temperament, you can always choose a different path to reach the same destination. The same person going to the same destination may choose two different routes. Because it's a Sunday, you can go through the city, there's no problem. Whereas if it is a weekday in the peak traffic, you may avoid the main roads of the city and go in another direction. So one need not think, oh, path of knowledge, I'm not that kind. So in my life, I will never go for that. Or I'm a person who is a very, very thinking individual. In my life, there is no need for karma yoga. All the different paths are useful to us. All these paths are available to us, and based on the situation, we can select it. So when it comes to one discipline, we may be using the path of karma yoga, whereas in another discipline, we may be using our intellect and our reasoning, we may be using buddhi yoga. So, like this, the paths are available to us, and one need not commit to any one path. We always can explore one, and if that doesn't work out, we can always use another one. Sri Bhagavan Vacha, Lokesmin Dvividha Nishtha
श्रीभगवानुवाच लोकेऽस्मिन् द्विविधा निष्ठा
Pura Prokta Mayanagha
पुरा प्रोक्ता मया नघ
ज्ञानयोगेन सांख्यानां
ज्ञानयोगेन साङ्ख्यानां
कर्मयोगेन योगिनाम्.
कर्मयोगेन योगिनाम्.
Then he says, "Na karmanam anarambhan naishkarmyam purushoshnute na cha samnyasanadeva siddhim samadhigacchati." One cannot achieve freedom from action by merely staying away from work. One does not become serene by merely giving up action. So, here, like I mentioned earlier, one should not mistake Vairagya for carelessness or heedlessness. Vairagya is the highest level of mindfulness, right? So, by being careless or aloof is not detachment. It is having a deep interest and being completely involved in something, at the same time not troubled by the different outcomes. So Krishna says, Purushaha karmanam anarambhat naishkarmyam na ashnute. A person who does not start any work, does not do any action, cannot achieve a state of naishkarmya. Naishkarmya is a state of freedom from action. Freedom from action basically means where one is not bound to the different outcomes of the uh, uh, whatever work we are undertaking. So they are not craving for a specific reward. So this freedom from action, freedom from the karma phala, cannot come from avoiding action. So I will not start any action, then therefore I'll be free from action. This is not right. And that's exactly why he says in the 47th shloka also, Mate sangostu karmani. Don't get attached to, not working. Don't become lazy. Don't shirk your responsibilities. That does not mean you will be free from the bondage of action. This just means you will become lazy. So he says, then karmanam sanyasat eva siddhim chana samadhi gacchati. So I want to become serene, so I will just not work. So then I will be very serene. That's not also the case. If you don't do work, it's just that you're lazy. Serenity should be despite working, in the middle of work, in the middle of action, you are not perturbed. That is being serene. Not at all taking up work, being careless, being irresponsible is not being serene. So here, in no uncertain terms, Krishna says, by just walking away, you are only being irresponsible, you are being mindless, you are not being a great sage. Na karmanam anarambhan
न कर्मणाम् अनारम्भात्
naishkarmyam purushošnute
नैष्कर्म्यं पुरुषोऽश्नुते
na cha sanyasanadev
न च सन्न्यासनादेव
siddhim samadhi gacchati.
सिद्धिं समधिगच्छति.
So here anarambhat plus naishkarmyam will become anarambhan naishkarmyam. So when you are reciting, you can either split it and say anarambhat, like what you did, or you can say anarambhan naishkarmyam purushošnute. Now, the next, he says, Nahi kaschit kshanamapi jatu tishtatya karma krit karyate hyavashah karma sarva prakriti jair gunaihi. It is not possible to remain passive even for a moment. It is nobody can be passive even for a moment, because everyone is helplessly drawn into action by inborn natural impulses. Purusha karmanam. Sorry, that's the next one. We already covered that. So, kaschit jatu kshanamapi akarmakrit nahi tishthati. So, it is not possible for a person to remain absolutely passive for even a moment. Kshanamapi, even for a moment, kaschit jatu kshanamapi akarmakrit nahi tishthati. Akarmakrit, not working, not engaging in action. Nobody can tishtati, nobody can be in that, stand in that, or be in that position. Sarvaha hi prakriti jaihi gunaihi avashaha karma karyate. Everyone is drawn into action by inborn prakriti jaihi. Prakriti is nature, prakriti ja is born of nature, prakriti jaihi is of those gunaihi, of those traits or impulses born from nature. We are drawn into action. So here, just because you're sitting without moving your limbs, your mind is working, the internal organs are working, but involuntarily we are drawn to certain movements and certain actions. So again, this is a very, very practical observation of the world, where Krishna says it is not possible. When you say you're remaining passive, you think you're remaining passive, but your thoughts are flying in all sorts of direction. Your body is, there is some twitch of the body. It's not possible to sit perfectly still without the slightest movement. There'll be some movement. At the end of the day, you're bound by your body, you're bound by nature. There will be some mosquito will come and buzz, you will move it out, or there will be a breeze or some there, and your body responds to it, or there is some romanchana sometimes. So we cannot be 100% in control of our body. It's not possible to completely remain passive, even for a moment. Always our mind is working, our internal organs are working, there's our body has some slight movement, and we are helplessly drawn into this by the process of processes of nature. This is what he says. Nahi kaschit kshanamapi
न हि कश्चित् क्षणमपि
jatu tishtatyakarmakrit
जातु तिष्ठत्य कर्मकृत्
कार्यते ह्यवशः कर्म
कार्यते ह्यवशः कर्म
सर्व प्रकृतिजैर्गुणैः.
सर्व प्रकृतिजैर्गुणैः.
Then he goes on to say, कर्मेन्द्रियाणि संयम्य य आस्ते मनसा स्मरन् इंद्रियार्थान् विमूढ़ात्मा मिथ्याचारः स उच्यते. So one who sits idle, restraining the organs of action, yet mentally broods over the sensation, is a hypocrite who has fooled himself. Yah Vimudhatma, a fool, a hypocrite, a deluded soul. Yah who? Yah Vimudhatma, Karmendriyani, Karma plus Indriyani, the Karmendriyas, which is the body of the organs of action. So hands and legs and speech and the genitals, all this thing, one who controls it, right? And he sits idle, samyamya, having controlled these organs of action, karmendriya, indriya arthan, manasa smaran, who mentally thinks about, remembers, broods over the various sensates, and who craves for sensation mentally, such a person is a hypocrite. Saha mithyacharaha uchyate. He is a hypocrite. He is a cheat. He is a liar. And what kind of so if this vimud atma is a fool or a person who has deluded, uh, he's fooled himself. Who is he fooling? Is he fooling somebody else? He's fooling himself when he is sitting quiet and acting as if he's in a state of samadhi, but mentally he's thinking about all sorts of things. He's fooling himself. He may also be fooling others. That's a different thing, like many of our modern day babas. So he may be fooling other people also, but first and foremost he is fooling himself, because this is not a great state to be. It is a superficial restraint, as if I am not eating something. Mentally I am brooding over this, because what happens when you mentally brood over the sensations? We go back to the second chapter, 62nd and 63rd verse. Preoccupied with sensation leads to attachment. Attachment lead to desire. Desire leads to unfulfilled desire lead to frustration and anger. Anger leads to confusion. Confusion leads to you know impairment of viveka, which leads to impaired destruction of buddhi, which leads to destruction of the individual. So this is the root cause of the buddhinashat pranashyati. So the final destruction of this person by the destruction of the power of reasoning starts with the attachment and the preoccupation with the sensations, right? So therefore a person who physically controls himself but is mentally thinking about these things will eventually lead to complete destruction. So the again and again we see in Bhagavad Gita that it is a very very practical guide. So it is not something which is for just for reading or just for parayana. So it's important to do parayana and reading. That's the first step. But there's no use if you are just reciting Bhagavad Gita every day and not changing your life. This is also a kind of mithyachara, where you just, oh, I am a very devout person, I read Bhagavad Gita every day. But if you don't bring that learning and that instruction into your life to elevate your level by even by 0.001 mm every day. If you don't raise your standard, just reciting it is of no use. However, if you are reciting it and you are bringing it into practice, then reciting it is very good, because that is a sort of reinforcement. Every day, if you recite few shlokas, or if you recite, like my friend Arjun, he recites one chapter every day. Our Shiva Swami Guruvadu recites the entire Bhagavad Gita every day in the evening. It takes him, I don't know, maybe an hour or something when he goes for a walk or when he's sitting in the evening for prayers. Every day, complete Bhagavad Gita he recites, does Parayana. So, like that, when people are implementing that message in their life, Parayana is very useful, because it is a daily reminder of the noble things, daily reminder, a daily boost for us, where we are trying to improve ourselves. Whereas the end goal itself is just recitation, it is not so as much useful. However, it's still useful, because instead of doing some wicked activity or sitting and reciting Gita, so that way definitely it is useful for Chitta Shuddhi, but you will be only stagnating in one place. To elevate to the next level, you have to implement the practice. So, Karmendriyani Samyamya,
कर्मेन्द्रियाणि संयम्य
Ya Aste Manasa Smaran,
य आस्ते मनसा स्मरन्
Indriyarthan Vimudhatma,
इन्द्रियार्थान् विमूढात्मा
Mithyacharah Sa Uchyate.
मिथ्याचारः स उच्यते.
Then he goes on to say, Yastu Indriyani Manasa Niyamyarabhate Arjuna Karmendriyaihi Karma Yogam Asaktaha Sa Vishishyate. A person excels when he or she disciplines the senses with the mind and engages the karmendriyas in work without getting attached to sensations. See, what a fantastic sutra is. All the loose ends he's tying up in just one shloka. He says, Arjuna, yaha tu asaktaha indriyani manasa niyamya. Asaktaha, which means um, um, I think so. Here, yaha tu asaktaha indriyani manasa niyamya. So through the mind, he controls the. So indriyani manasa niyamya. So he excels when he controls the various organs of the jnanendriyas, the organs of like the sense organs, with um, the mind in a uh, asakta detached manner, and karmendriyaha, karma yogam. So he engages in the actions, his karmendriyas, with karma yoga, where without attachment to the results, arabhate saha vishishyate. Such a person excels. Such a person becomes, uh, reaches a very high level. Now there are two parts to this shloka, right? So one part is disciplining the sense organs with the mind. So we have what are called the jnanendriyas, the five sense organs, nose and ears and eyes and skin and tongue. So these are the five sense organs. We have the five karmendriyas, or the organs of action. That is hands, legs, speech, genitals, and the anus. So these are the five organs of action. So organs of the sense organs, jnanendriyas, and karmendriyas. So these totally the 10 indriyas of our body. So here the first part, the jnanendriyas, he is controlling with his mind. He is disciplining the sense organs with his mind. How do you discipline the sense organs? By keeping away from the sensates. We looked at how the tortoise withdraws its limbs within itself. Similarly, here a person disciplines his sense organ with the mind and withdraws it from the sensates, and he engages the organs of action, the karmendriyas, in work. He doesn't sit quiet. He engages the karmendriyas in work but without getting attached to the actions, without getting attached to the results of the actions, without getting attached to the sensations. So all these, so working without attachment, controlling the sense organs. So in a nutshell, he gives the method to deal with all the indriyas. Yastu indriyani manasa
यस्त्विन्द्रियाणि मनसा
niyamyarabhate arjuna.
नियम्यारभते अर्जुन.
So this is this Purva Rupa Sandhi. So Niyam Yarabhate Arjuna. So that A is swallowed. Niyam Yarabhate Arjuna.
नियम्यारभतेऽर्जुन.
Karmendriyaihi karma yogam
कर्मेन्द्रियैः कर्मयोगम्
asaktaha sa vishishyate.
असक्तः स विशिष्यते.
So see, the in an like a sutra form, this is a wonderful shloka. One of my friends, Sagar, was asking which are the shlokas to memorize. So I said, well, all the 700 you can memorize. It's very good. But if you can't memorize all the 700, at least whatever shlokas where you find the meaning to be interesting, where you like the meaning, you can start by memorizing those, because it will be useful for a daily manana, that you are remembering a few verses which um, are having a very good meaning, which appeal to you. Like I said, the Bhagavad Gita is a Sarvanukula Shastra, which has got something in it for everybody. So, what is there in it for you? If you take that and memorize it, it is useful. So, this is one of those shlokas which is in a nutshell. It tells you how to deal with the indriyas. Okay. Then he says, Niyatam kuru karmatvam karma jyayo hyakarmanaha sharira yatrapi chate na prasidhyed akarmanaha. So he says, do the work you are supposed to do. Certainly, it is better than laziness, because even the basic maintenance of your body is not possible without action. This is a wonderful observation. Very, very, it seems so simple, but it is very profound. It's very, and it's something which we should not forget. He says, Tvam niyatam karma kuru. Do the work you are supposed to do in whatever position. You may be at your workplace, you may be at home, you may be with friends. Whatever is your work, whatever you are supposed to do. If you are sitting with your child and you are babysitting, you have certain work to do. You should ensure that you cannot be busy with your phone if you are asked to take care of your child. Or if your wife or your husband has gone out and you are taking care of your kid, you can't be preoccupied with your phone. You can't be going out somewhere. You have to give all the attention to the child. Whereas if the child is, if the child is some 6 months old or 1 year old, you have to give all the attention. Whereas that your child is some 40 years old, you don't have to bother. You can sit in that room. That child will have to take care of you. So your karma is to just not trouble that child. That's all. Like this, similarly, when you are in a friends group, you are sitting and chatting. So you do whatever it is that is required for your friend. You may be giving some solace to them, or you may be cracking a joke and lightening the mood. So in whatever position you are, do the work you are supposed to do. What is appropriate in that position? Now, this has to come with certain amount of wisdom. What is right for me to do? And he says, Tvam niyatam karma kuru. Do the work you're supposed to do. Karma hi akarmanaha jayaha. It is definitely, action is definitely better than laziness. Being lethargic, doing appropriate action is definitely better than doing nothing, to being lazy. He says, Akarmanaha te sharira yatra. Very nice usage. Sharira yatra, the journey of the body, in this grand journey of life, in Sharira yatra, cha api na prasidhyate. It is not possible to maintain this body, this journey of this body, this journey of life, by being lazy, by indulging in akarmana, by being lethargic. You cannot even maintain your body. You cannot even be healthy. You cannot even have a basic things going if you are lazy, right? So there is a famous, I don't remember the exact words, but famous Subhashita, right? Even in the for the case of a lion, if the lion is sleeping, the food will not come and fall into the mouth of the lion. So lion, even the great lion, such a fantastic, the king of the jungle, has to go and fight and has to hunt and then get its food. So it won't just like that fall into your mouth. Nothing in this life will just like that come. So you have to work for it. You have to uh, do the appropriate action. Another fantastic, fantastic shloka. Niyatam kuru karmatvam, Sangeeta ji.
Yeah. Niyatam kuru karmatvam
Karma jyayo hyakarmanaha.
karma jyayo hai karmanah.
So what happens? He akarmanaha will become hyakarmanaha. Karma jyayo hyakarmanaha.
कर्म ज्यायो है कर्मणः
Sharira yatra pichate
शरीर यात्रापि च ते
na prasiddhyed akarmanaha.
न प्रसिद्धेद कर्मणः.
We'll just quickly go through one more verse because then after that we will have the connection to the episode of Prajapati. Yajnarthat karmanonyatra lokoyam karma bandhanah tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sanga samachara. Humans are bound by their actions except when they are performed for the sake of yajna. Thus, Arjuna, do your work free from attachments in the spirit of yajna. So, yajnarthat, for the sake of yajna. Yajna plus arthat, yajnarthat, for the sake of yajna, or for in the spirit of yajna. Basically, that's what it means. Karmanaha anyatra ayam lokaha karma bandhanaha bhavati. So, except for yajnartha karmanaha anyatra, everything else loka in this of in this world, people, karma bandhanaha bhavati is to be understood. We have to do an adhyahara that humans are bound by their actions except when they are performed with yajnartha, with the focus on yajna or a spirit of yajna. So kaunteya tadartham, therefore artham tadartham muktaha sangaha, free from attachments, karma samachara, work free from attachments in the spirit of yajna. You're working in the spirit of yajna, free from all attachments, then really we can be free from the karma bandha. Again, like I said, bondage of action or karma bandha means being obsessed with the karma phala or the fruit of action. When we are driven strongly by the possible outcomes, then we are bound. When we are doing work for the sake of doing the work and not attached to the results, then we are free. We are not bound. Then our mental situation also will be very relaxed. So therefore we have to work in a spirit of yajna. What is spirit of yajna and what is the nature of yajna, we will see in tomorrow's session. So let us just recite this verse before closing up. Yajnarthat karmanonyatra.
यज्ञार्थात् कर्मण्योऽन्यत्र
So karmanaha anyatra becomes karmanonyatra. Yajnarthat karmanonyatra.
यज्ञार्थात् कर्मणोऽन्यत्र
Lokoyam karma bandhanaha.
लोकोऽयं कर्म बन्धनः
Tadartham karma kaunteya.
तदर्थं कर्म कौन्तेय
Mukta sangaha samachara.
मुक्तसङ्गः समाचर.
So here in the first opening verses of the third chapter, the lot of very nice padyas, shlokas, where he's talking about very very practical aspects, that real renunciation is full-fledged engagement with the activity, but mentally being detached. Whereas if it's other way around, mentally you're attached, but physically you're sitting quiet, it is terrible, worst thing. It is not helping the world, it is not helping you. Whereas if you are engaging in karma yoga and doing activity, it helps the world, and by being mentally detached, it helps you. So one should not do it in the other way. So a person excels when the senses are controlled with the mind, and the organs of actions are put to work without bothering about sensations, without bothering about possible outcomes. So, with this, we come to the close of today's session. We will meet tomorrow once again. Om Tat Sat. Thank you.